Hello everyone and welcome to the very first Wrestling Freak #1 live video podcast on YouTube. I am your host, I am Wrestling Freak #1, and I'm going to start the show off. I'm going to start this podcast off by talking about the same thing that everyone is talking about right now, and that is CM Punk. All of you probably know that he was recently on the Art of Wrestling podcast with Colt Cabana, his good friend, many years, going all the way back years ago when they were on the indie scene. And everyone's talking about this interview, and everyone's also kind of talking about the reaction to the interview, but I'll get to that in a little bit. I myself was a little bit surprised that he really talked about as much as he did and really let the fans know as much as he did to what happened, why he wound up leaving, actually fired from WWE, and I just wanted to kind of give my reaction on that. I have known for a couple of years that CM Punk is maybe a little bit of a, how do I put it, not egomaniac, but maybe he's a mark for himself. And there's nothing wrong with that. I'm not knocking the guy for being a mark for himself. But everyone knows that he can sometimes maybe be a little bit difficult to work with. I've heard this in several other shoot interviews from other guys who are in the business, that backstage, yeah, he can be a little bit difficult. So that didn't really surprise me. However, I am 100% Team Punk. I am on Punk's side 100% because of some of the things that he said that Vince McMahon and the WWE put him through leading up to the events where he decided this wasn't for me anymore. I don't want to do this anymore. I don't love doing this anymore. So the events that led up to him eventually leaving, by the end of the podcast, maybe in the beginning, maybe my reaction was a little bit, well, this guy's just being a prissy pants, and this guy's just being a little bit of an egomaniac, and he really, he just really just believes that he is the best in the world, and it's really hard to argue that for a while he wasn't the best in the world. Right now it's probably Daniel Bryan. Well, I mean, he's out with an injury right now, but I'm sure when he comes back, he'll be the best in the world again. And he was the best when he was there in WWE before his injury, after CM Punk. And CM Punk was the best while he was there. There's absolutely no denying that. However, CM Punk really believes a lot of his own shit. He really is. I hate to say it, but he's a mark for himself. Again, not knocking the guy for that. But some of the stuff that WWE put him through was absolute bullshit. Working hurt. I mean, everyone works hurt. You always hear stories of guys working hurt, and they always say, you never learn how to work until you work hurt. That's kind of the backstage philosophy. But the thing with the thing on his back, having to work with MRSA, which he didn't even know it was MRSA. Look that up if you don't know what MRSA is. For so many months, which is serious. He had a serious staph infection, which is actually exactly what it was. Not working the main event at WrestleMania. Okay, that I can kind of say, well, maybe he's just being, maybe he's just asking for too much. I don't really know. But he's absolutely right in saying that him and Undertaker had the best match at WrestleMania the year before. They stole the show. I didn't think that any other match on that show, could hold a candle to CM Punk and the Undertaker. So a lot of the things he was saying was absolutely true, and my reaction in the beginning was kind of, okay, this guy's just being difficult, like I've heard he can be, and then by the end of the interview, I was 100% on his side. A a lot of the things, a few other things that Vince and WWE put him through while he was there, besides working hurt and not working the match at WrestleMania and not figuring out that he had a serious staph infection, was he was hurt on purpose, probably, according to CM Punk, by Ryback. Ryback kicked him in the ribs on purpose and put him out. But I didn't really want to talk too much about the podcast. All of you probably have heard it already. If you haven't, it's up on YouTube. Just type in CM Punk, Colt Cabana, Art of Wrestling, and it'll definitely come up. And you can listen to it there, watch it there. But I kind of wanted to talk a bit more about the reaction to the podcast, and also Vince McMahon on the Stone Cold Steve Austin show on the WWE network, which also kind of surprised me, some of the things that were said on that podcast. So first, the reaction to the podcast did not really go over so well backstage, as some of you could probably imagine. Vince was not happy, and Trips was livid. From what I've heard, Triple H was very upset, very upset by some of the things that were said, especially because a lot of the things that were said by Punk were said about him, about how Triple H held him down and everything like that, and a lot of the backstage stuff. And CM Punk started the interview off by saying that he didn't want it to be a shoot interview, but it really kind of did become a shoot interview by the end. He really just gave a lot of stuff away, which, I mean, hey, you know, if you've listened to other Art of Wrestling podcasts, that's what happens. I mean, you know, shoot interviews are the thing now, you know. So, and they have been the thing for at least 10-15 years, but shoot interviews seem to be really popular now. So the reaction backstage was not good. Triple H was not happy, and pretty much told everyone on his roster not to go on Colt Cabana's show. And from reports that I've heard, it seems like Colt Cabana is completely cut off from ever doing business with the WWE ever again, and so is CM Punk. But I don't think that's really a problem, because CM Punk already stated that he was never, ever going back. A little bit, maybe Jericho reference there, going back to the WWE. So I think Punk just kind of shrugged that off. Something else that was said in the podcast, the Art of Wrestling podcast with Colt Cabana, was that CM Punk was fired on his wedding day. Now, this brings me to the Stone Cold Steve Austin show, which was on the network with Vince McMahon. Vince McMahon was, I think, pretty much trying to make the entire thing work. And by that, what I mean is not that the entire CM Punk thing was a work, because I really don't believe it was. Maybe in the beginning I did, but now I'm kind of convinced that it was not a work. Although if it was a work, it's a really good work. But it's probably not a work. Although I'm one of those people that kind of believes that Survivor Series 97 still might have been a work. But anyway, if Survivor Series 97 is a work, it's the best work of all time. Okay. And Vince McMahon said that, first of all, I was really kind of surprised that he let Stone Cold shoot as much as he did. And like I said, you know, I really thought it was going to be like a planned out thing. I really thought it was going to be more of a work, and it was going to be like prepared questions. But a lot of things came up. The Cesaro situation came up, which was kind of surprising, and a bunch of other names came up. Randy Savage, Ultimate Warrior, and it really did kind of remind me of the Pipe Bomb promo, which CM Punk says, you know, he hates it being called the Pipe Bomb promo, but it did sort of remind me of that when Brock Lesnar's name came up, and Hulk Hogan and Paul Heyman. Before those three guys ever came back and worked in the company again. Remember, CM Punk did that promo before Brock Lesnar or Paul Heyman came back into the company. And I believe at that time Hulk Hogan may have not been on good terms with WWE. I'm not sure, he might have been. It was post Hall of Fame, so I might be wrong about that. Anyway, so a lot of things were said that did kind of remind me of that famous pipe bomb promo, because names kept coming up that I really didn't expect to come up in that interview, in that podcast. Excuse me. So it was a little bit surprising. Anyway, the reason I mentioned CM Punk getting fired on his wedding day is because Vince McMahon said, "Oh well, we just sent out the papers, and it was one office to another office, and we didn't really check if it was a good day or anything like that." And that's sort of the problem with WWE being as big as it is right now, being a worldwide publicly traded company. Isn't that it's great for Vince, it's great for the executives, but it's not really good for a lot of the boys. It's not really good for a lot of the workers, because they're getting screwed, like CM Punk got screwed and got fired, got FedExed his papers on his wedding day. If that's true, I don't know. A couple of other things came up. I already mentioned the Cesaro thing. Brock Lesnar, well, he asked, basically, Stone Cold Steve Austin asked Vince McMahon, why isn't Brock Lesnar around? He's the champion. Why isn't he should be around? And basically he called Brock Lesnar a special attraction, and said that Lesnar, there was a lot more on Punk. They talked about Punk for a while, but I'm not really going to get into everything that they talked about. Maybe I might do a follow-up to this video and talk more about the Stone Cold Steve Austin and Vince McMahon podcast. But I really wanted to cover more the Colt Cabana CM Punk podcast. So he called Vince McMahon called Brock Lesnar a special attraction. Well, he's the WWE champion. To which Vince said, well, it should be more about the stories, not the belt. Okay, now you can kind of see where WWE is going in a different direction, how they're not the same company they were 15, 20 years ago. And it's not a good thing. I mean, Vince McMahon, a lot of wrestling fans and a lot of wrestling observers and wrestling so-called smart marks have been calling Vince McMahon out of touch for a while. If things are going to get better, under Triple H, whenever he decides, or whenever Vince decides to step down and that Triple H is going to take the reins, if it's going to be better, who knows? But I don't know. Anyway, things overall, in my opinion, are really interesting in wrestling right now, especially because of all of this. And when things start to happen in wrestling that are a shoot, or even if they're a worked shoot, Survivor Series being one back in '97, Montreal, it's a good thing for wrestling. It's a good thing for the business, and it makes things interesting because smart marks want to get on board. And everyone wants to watch, and everyone wants to know what's going on backstage, so it really generates a lot of attention. And if all of it is a work, hey, it's a work. It's a really good work. We got worked. We're the marks. But if it's not, it's still good for business to steal one of Triple H's lines. But anyway, that is all for right now. I will probably do a follow-up where I talk more about the CM Punk situation. If there are any more updates on CM Punk, hey, he's happy writing comic books right now. The guy's out of wrestling and he's writing comic books. He probably, he already said in the podcast, he's the happiest he's been in years. So good for the guy, good for him. Good on you, Punk. So probably the next podcast that I do, or next video that I do, will be an update to the CM Punk situation, and maybe talk more about the Stone Cold Vince McMahon podcast. As for right now, thank you very much for watching. See you next time.